All right.
All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Inside Plug Podcast. Today's guest, I'm your host, Destiny Hops, and today's guest is an award-winning animator and director. He has his own animated comedy short. He has worked with uh, celebrities such as Hailey Bieber, Kylie Jenner, and uh, is it Reezy Renegade?
Breezy Renegade.
Reezy Renegade, Cottonmouth Kings, and so much more. Please welcome John David Irvin.
Irvin. Thank you.
Irvin.
Pronounced it perfectly.
So let's start from the beginning. What made you pursue animation?
So it started when I was about 5. Lion King came out in 1994, and that was a big light bulb moment, I think, for a lot of artists that age. At the end of the Circle of Life montage, I just started crying, and my dad was like, "Are you okay?" And I was just like, "It's so beautiful. I just want to make pictures move." So I said to him when we got home, "How do I make my drawings move like that?" He said, "Well, you just have to draw it over and over again." And I think he thought that saying you'll just have to draw it over and over again was going to be like a letdown for me.
Mm-hmm.
I could just kind of see it in his eyes, like he was breaking the news to me that it was tedious.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, I was like, I get to draw the same picture again and again. And I was so excited about it. So for probably the next year, just about every day, I would draw Rafiki holding Simba and just animate that motion just over and over again. And that just kind of followed me, that passion to make pictures move and breathe and feel like they're living, just followed me throughout high school, throughout college. But it wasn't until I was 25 that I realized I didn't have to wait for someone's permission to work in the arts. There's this weird stigma with the arts that if you're interested in it, you should probably find something else to do because there's not going to be money in it. And while I understand people's concern, like, the arts is a multi-billion-dollar industry. Like, there are always jobs in the arts. Go for your passion.
Right.
You might not get as far as you thought you would, or as much as far as you'd hoped, but you'll still be working in an industry you're interested in, rather than being like, I'm going to do something completely different with my life and just think how much I would like to be involved with something else. So thankfully, around 25, I realized, like, this is silly. Why I'm not actually doing anything to promote myself into the world of entertainment that I want to be in, which is animated films and animated TV shows, specifically for adults. I find that really interesting, like using animation as a tool rather than a genre. I feel like people think of animation as for kids, but as we know from Adult Swim, Rick and Morty, Primal, animation can be very adult and very dramatic and not just frat humor. But I wanted to be in that world, and I realized I wasn't doing anything for it. And part of it was that I was too scared to. I felt like if I shot my shot and it didn't work, I'd be letting myself down. And it was almost like pursuing the dream and possibly failing was worse than just dreaming about being in it.
Right.
That's a weird, apathetic place that I think we all get, and it's just born out of social insecurity. But eventually I thought, I'm done with this. I'm living in LA. I'd moved there a couple years prior, kind of as the first step. Like, to be in the industry, you have to move to where the industry is. And it's not quite like that anymore, but it was at the time. And I thought, I need to do something. So I went on Craigslist. And I'm all self-taught. I didn't go to school for animation or anything. I majored in other things that had nothing to do with what I actually wanted to do. So I went on Craigslist and I thought, this is a good place to start. Hopefully I can find something that gets me paid something.
Right.
And I clicked on a link, and they wanted like a Beavis and Butthead style animation, kind of. And they gave me like there were some examples of the look they wanted. So I just made something that afternoon. It was just a guy saying hi, like in a Beavis and Butthead style, literally just saying hi. And I sent that to them and said, I have no experience at all, other than I do like animation as a hobby on the side, but I have no demo reel. You should hire me because I have everything to prove. And for most people, that probably wouldn't work.
Right.
But thankfully, they looked at what I had done and were like, okay, this guy's willing to do this. He obviously is very passionate about animation. Like I was very clear, I have things to show you. You will not be disappointed. And so they contacted me and we talked a bit. And I didn't know who it was for. It turned out to be for Ricky Hill, who is Tommy Hilfiger's son. So not only did I get hired for that music video, he hired me for 10 more. And then he hired me to create an animated pilot with him. So that opened up so many doors. The biggest door being people seeing my work. Like any artist, I think one of the biggest hurdles is actually getting seen. A lot of people think that they should just go viral and want to go viral, but they don't actually have the capacity to keep up with that. And also the idea of going viral just isn't as easy as it once sounded. It's much more complex. Now there's algorithms, etc. It's not as easy as just making something cool and putting it online. And you can't just put anything online and be successful.
Yeah, because everybody's seen it all. So it's really hard to come up with something new.
To stand out and also for people to actually discover you. Like there's so much white noise now. And it was no different at that time, but like it was a little different in terms of how you got seen. The idea of going viral was much more like a little more doable 10 years ago than it is now. But this was just a jump start. It meant that instead of me having to make a ton of content in order to get noticed, I suddenly got noticed overnight once I finished that first music video, because it was someone that already had a built-in fan base and was already sharing things. So that was a huge stroke of luck. And that's part of being an artist, is being ready for those big moments.
Right.
And they're so rare that they come. So I consider myself most of all just very lucky to be where I am, because I kind of stumbled into a really big jump start.
Okay. So you mentioned the style for the animation, the Beavis and Butthead was like paper. What was the style again?
Their style is 2D, but I adapted it to paper puppet animation. So 2D animation is frame by frame. And so if I pick up my mug of coffee and drink out of it, it's just, you have to draw every single frame, probably at between 12 to 24 frames per second.
Okay.
If you're doing paper puppets, you draw my arm, you draw the cup, you draw me, and then you just move that like on a hinge.
Okay.
Paper puppets have been around since I think like 1906. I think that was when, I'm blanking on his name, it's Alexander something, but he did the first known like paper puppet stop motion animation, and he was, I believe, the director of the Russian ballet, and so he did ballet dancers but paper puppets of them, and that's all handcrafted. So the difference between a lot of paper puppet animation and my paper puppet animation is I don't do it in the computer completely. I move things in the computer, but everything I make starts out handcrafted.
Okay. So so the Lion King is 2D, right? Toy Story is 3D.
Yes.
And then you have Naruto, which is anime,
yeah.
So how do you, so when animators do projects on television and movies, how do they know what animation goes with what? Is it just the artist, the limit of style that the artist can do, or how do companies know what is best for what story?
I'd answer that. I think companies frequently don't know what's best for each story. I think it just kind of comes down to budget. For a long time, I know like John Lasseter was trying to get a feature for animation done, for 3D animation done, way back in the 80s and 90s, early 90s. And he directed Brave Little Toaster, and Brave Little Toaster he pitched as 3D animation. So it was going to be like Toy Story. Toy Story hadn't been made yet, obviously. And he was turned down. No, it needs to be 2D. Even though it would cost the same amount of money to do 3D, it was still too new and different. And he finally got Toy Story made, and that was 3D animation. And then everything was 3D for a while. Like it really took over quite fast. DreamWorks Animation, like if they hadn't made Shrek, they would have been bankrupt. Like Sinbad made no money. Prince of Egypt made very little money. And these are beautifully animated films. Right. And in comparison to the 3D animated films at that time in the early thousands, they just could not compete. Like Disney's Atlantis, beautiful animation, a lot of 2D special effects, and it was a box office flop because audiences just wanted to see 3D animation. So part of it is, if you're going to a company pitching something, you're not going to have nearly as much control, obviously, because the company is going to say, well, we have this budget and we think that the algorithm is telling us that this demographic responds to this better, and it's not really in your control. I know that any artist with a story and a visual idea knows exactly how they want that film to be made. And that's probably going to be a combination of style and personal taste and what is possible within the confines of each discipline of animation, because different ones need different types of artists. A 3D animator is going to not be the person that's going to be drawing things frame by frame. There's equally talented, immensely talented individuals into very separate disciplines working in the same genre of art, which is animation. So it's gone from just being people making stop motion and paper puppets to now encompassing so many forms of animation. There are just endless amounts of animation that we're still inventing. Now there's a AI animation. So like the AI art that's coming out, we're actually getting computers to just animate things based on prompts. Like that's huge. There's going to be so many different forms of animation as we continue into the future as well. We're just, I think, at the very precipice of animation kind of taking over. Also, like, think about the biggest films of the year in terms of money. You're going to instantly see Marvel. Like Marvel films make so much money. They are frequently like animated. Like Endgame is basically an animated film. There's like they put the actors' faces on the bodies, but these are all animated worlds. Like this is all an animated environment. We just still think of it as live action.
Right, CGI and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I have a few questions related to that. Let me see if I can. The first one is, what are some softwares that, if you're doing a remote job, because during the pandemic, some people are still doing remote jobs or still wanting to learn how to draw and stuff and pursue that career. What are some softwares that you can do that's low budget or that you use, or whatever price range would you suggest?
Well, it depends on what you're interested in pursuing within animation. Like I said, there's 2D, there's 3D, there's paper puppet. I do paper puppet primarily, and I do 2D. I used to do 3D. When I was a teenager, I experimented with like Lightwave and Strata. These are things that aren't really used anymore. Now it's basically Maya. So if you're going to be doing 3D animation, a cheap way to do it and just kind of get your bearings is Blender. It's free. To my knowledge, and you can learn. It's a website and a program, and you can learn how to do animation through them. And it's 3D animation, and they have tutorials, and it's excellent, especially if you want to work in special effects. And you can do that remotely. Basically, animation can, for the most part, all be done remotely because it's computer programs. Something like Maya is going to be very expensive, so you can probably get some sort of educational like fee waived, but I don't know much about it because 3D animation, while I love looking at it, it's not my expertise and not really the field I do. But I would say look into Blender, look into Maya. As on the 2D animation side, you're going to look at Toon Boom is kind of industry standard. I have Toon Boom and I've worked in Toon Boom. I use it a lot for lip syncing because they have a really good lip syncing program. Now I use Adobe After Effects for lip syncing, but those are both expensive programs. I actually just use Apple Motion because it's paper puppets. So I don't need the enormous power of Toon Boom behind me. I can do it on a $50 Apple Motion. Like that's so much preferable if you're just starting out and just kind of trying to figure out if you like compositing, if you like effects. And so that's what I recommend. That's what served me. If you're looking to get a job in freelance for something huge, look at what those studios are using and try to find some educational version of that program, and then just practice. But if you're looking to make things for yourself, like I am, and looking to freelance where you're not working with big companies, you're working with other artists, or producers of content that they're the ones working with big company. Use whatever programs are easiest for you that get you the best results in the fastest amount of time. Because this might be bad advice. Hopefully it's not. For me, animation is such a tedious thing. You want to be using programs that you're comfortable with if you are making things mostly for yourself or as a freelancer and people are paying you for your style. Find out how to do a style on something that is a tool that is cheap and easy and convenient for you.
Okay. What are your thoughts on VR and this new interactive animation world for roller coasters and even movies that they're coming out with nowadays?
It's endless. I'm really excited for virtual reality. I don't know how we're going to use it to tell stories, and that's just me not having a big enough imagination yet. But I was lucky enough to work with some VR in early 2015, 2014. A friend of mine had, I believe it was that time. It was early though, but a friend of mine said he wanted to basically make a VR environment to walk around in and sort of experiment, like with he's like, it might be a short film, it might be a game, I'm not sure. Can you make designs and kind of come up with a concept? So I made a bunch of designs and he built it all. And then he came over and I put on the headset and I was able to walk around in a world that I had created. Like, I hadn't created it in the computer, but I had designed every aspect of it. And that was a surreal, mind-blowing experience. And I want to get into it more, but I don't know how to tell the stories that I'm telling in that field. Because you have to adapt, and that's what's awesome about new technology is you're forced to adapt and forced to find new ways to tell stories. But think about when you're watching a film, you have limited information because you're only seeing what the camera sees. If you can all of a sudden look around in an environment within a story, you as a storyteller have to find ways to still surprise and interest your audience. You can't just have someone sneak up on someone. Like that doesn't work. You can't have jump scares as much. I mean, you still can, but you have to build it differently. Like you have to adapt to this new medium. So I don't know how to adapt to it yet. And I think there's going to be a lot of bad adaptation before there is good adaptation. But that's necessary for all art. Like as an artist, you have to make a lot of bad art first before you make something that's good. You have to make a lot of art that you look back on and go, oh, and you just cringe. Like I do that with a lot of my old art, especially from being a teenager, but like even in my 20s. Yeah, it's like you look back and you're like, oh, I know what I was going for and I did not hit that at all.
You gotta start somewhere.
You do. And I know that's how new technologies are frequently. It's they put out stuff and you think, oh, that's not gonna work, and then it just evolves. And so I'm excited to see what VR does, because I know it's going to completely shake up cultural storytelling the way we have it now. It's been stagnant for a while, just the film version, and now we have the advent of prestige TV. You're not going to the movies, you're seeing a 18-hour film play out in front of you night after night. Like it's a whole different form of community and storytelling, because that's, at the end of the day, that's what storytelling is. It's this search for community. And it used to be people would sit around a fire. I'm talking like Bronze Age, people sitting around a fire telling stories and drawing cave paintings. And we still have that need. And then talking about stories the next day, we still have that need. It's just now we have different tribes that watch House of the Dragon. This tribe watches Better Call Saul. And we can all find a sense of community and, hey, we all watch the same story. And because of capitalism, we have a very specific way that we tell stories in order to make money. So you kind of get a lot of stories that feel very much like the same story over and over again. And I think VR is going to shake that up tremendously, because we're going to have to adapt and find new ways to tell these stories.
Okay. So have you heard the movie Life of Pi?
Yes.
But that is, the audience might know this, but me personally, is that like, that's animation first and then they use a green screen to create the tiger? Or
it's a hybrid. That film is complex. It's beautiful. If you haven't seen it and you're listening, watch Life of Pi. It's a beautiful film. They used a real tiger in some moments. It was a little dangerous. I think one of the tigers, I don't want to spread misinformation, I believe one of the tigers almost drowned, sadly. I've read that, but it was okay. Tiger's fine as far as I know. And then they started, I think, using the 3D tiger much more after that. So there are shots where I didn't know that. I wasn't sure if it was a real tiger or fake tiger depending on the shot when I was watching it. The second time watching it, I was able to discern much more. But yeah, they used a real tiger and a fake tiger and then just composited, and lots of green screen in that film as well. But it's beautiful.
And I know I am spreading misinformation but they did use a real dragon in Game of Thrones, people. Yep. So I know that for sure.
Really, it's yeah. Don't even get me started on
his real name is Teddy, and he lives in LA, and they use. But yeah, the next question is, so you were able to do all these wonderful things just by networking, right? And then, so what are your opinions on college? Because I ask everyone who's in entertainment, is it necessary to go to college to really sharpen your skills and network more and stuff like that? What are your thoughts?
Oh, it's such a complex question. And so I might ramble a little bit because my answer is going to be hopefully equaling that complexity. So I can really only speak from my own experience. I went to a community college and got a couple of associate's degrees. And then I decided, after getting accepted into Chico State, right before I was about to start, I was like interviewing some people at the Chipotle that I was managing while putting myself through college. And I was interviewing people that had a bachelor's and had just graduated and were looking for a job at Chipotle. And that scared me because I was like, I'm about to spend a tremendous amount of money and I'm about to major in something that I'm not actually interested in. I was majoring in English. I love English literature. I love it. At the same time, I don't want to be an English teacher. That's not where I wanted my life to go. And yet that's what I was pursuing, because we're kind of told, if you want to work in the arts, don't do something else, have a backup. So I was doing that and I realized, like, this isn't what I should be doing. So I didn't do that. I could have been like, oh, I will switch majors instead, major in art. But I just decided against all of it. And I thought, I'm just going to put any money that I invest into myself, into my art. And you can put that money into yourself by putting it into a school and going to school. If you're working for like some giant company, if you're like, I want to be at Disney, then maybe Cal Arts is the way to go for you. But that was never my dream. I was never one of those people that's like, I want to animate at Disney and I want to animate at Pixar, because I know that if you're animating there, it's got to be amazing. You're surrounded by incredibly talented people, but you're making someone else's vision at all times. And I have my own stories I want to tell. I have my own visions in my head that I want to project on a screen. So for me, I wouldn't do it differently in terms of going to community college. Community college was really important for me, just expanding my horizons, expanding my mind. I was a homeschooled kid in a very rural area. So suddenly being in an environment with other people, hearing other opinions, was super important for my own development. Otherwise, I just would have been a weird, isolated person with very limited worldview. So going to school or getting an education is amazing and expands your worldview tremendously. And I've met some amazing teachers. I have professors that are still friends of mine that I still talk to. I even like collaborate with them sometimes. So school can be very invaluable. However, it really depends on what you want to do and what your goals are. And I don't think that our current educational system of, hey, you're 18, here's $100,000 that you now have to pay back for the rest of your life. Yeah. Go pay it to someone else to gatekeep knowledge to you. And I know that sounds embittered, but I just don't think it's a sustainable system. And I want to see a change in that, which reminds me, there is a creator named Rad Seacrest. He did, I think it's called Kipo and the Wonder Beasts on Netflix. And right now he's co-making a film called The Brave War, which looks incredible. But look him up. He's on Instagram, Rad Seacrest. I'm sure he's probably on TikTok as well. He has I don't know if he's created it, but he is very much involved with like a school collective called Project City TV, where you basically take animation classes from the greats like Shannon Tyndall. He did most of the directing and did all the storyboarding, an initial story and writing for Kubo and the Two Strings. And he's incredible. He has like a class on there. There's just all these industry heavyweights, like really amazing creatives that I look up to that basically teach like master classes on it. And it's much more affordable than going to Cal Arts. So if you're someone that says, hey, I want to be involved in this and I really feel I need to learn in a class environment, there are affordable options for you on the internet. They're just not the traditional ones that make big universities money. So you might not hear about them as much. But if I was younger, if I was like, I'm 33, if I was 23 right now, I would definitely be getting into Project City TV and doing that. And I still might. I'm just too busy animating and freelancing and making my own projects to do that at the moment. But I've seen a couple classes on there come up, and it's always kind of in the back of my mind. One of these days, I need to expand my horizons more and take one of these classes from these great teachers that are on here.
Okay, so we have about like 3 minutes left, so I want to do a rapid fire question.
All right.
The first question is, how can people stay in contact with you, the audience? If you have any socials or anything like that?
Yes. Yeah, I'm primarily on Instagram. It's what I've had the most success with in terms of booking clients, which is why I'm on it. So I'm on Instagram. It's the John Irvine. Irvine is spelled Irvine, Irvine, like the city in LA and Scotland. So it's John Irvine, the John Irvine. I also have a website, thejohnirvine.com. I also have a Patreon if you want to throw some money my way to get my films going that I'm working on. And that is a link on my Instagram.
Second question, what are some future projects that you're working on?
Right now I'm working on Common Monsters, which is a full-length animated film using handcrafted paper puppets. I'm really excited about it. I've been working on that for a while. I made the first 20 minutes and sent it out to different film festivals. It's won 3 awards. It's been in 10 film festivals. I'm immensely proud of it. And right now I'm trying to get more funding to get more cast in it. It currently has Sherilyn Fenn from Twin Peaks and also has Jacob Reynolds from Gummo. And then I'm also working on a short film called The Last Goblin that I'm really excited about.
Okay. If you had the choice to either receive $500,000 or have a meeting with Jay-Z, which one would you choose?
Tempting. Jay-Z's brilliant. But I would go to the meeting and be like, so can you give me $500,000 because I'm trying to make something. So I think rather than having to pitch, I'd rather just get the money, but it is tempting.
Very tempting. And what do you want people to remember you by when they see your animation, when you're long gone? What do they want to remember you by?
I want them to remember the experience. I want them to have an experience where they feel like their mind and heart is being opened and they're being surprised. That's what I want. And when I make art, when I make animation, when I make my stories, I want people to have that euphoric sense of laughter and horror at the same time, where like you're scared and then you're relieved and then you're broken and then you're rebuilt again. I think that happens in all our lives in slow motion, like watching a plant. You can't watch it grow, but if you put it in fast motion, you see all that growth happen. And that's what stories are. We start at the beginning and we go through and our character goes through a change and grows. And it makes us feel like we can change and grow. So if people watch my stuff and remember me, I want it to be because they saw something and felt like they could emulate the change and growth they saw.
Right, that was great. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
You guys are listening. Thanks for having me.
You guys are listening to Insight Plug. I'm Destiny, and see you on the next episode.
Thanks again.
Hey, have a good one. Thank you.
Thank you.